Hello, friends. Welcome to the Thinning of the Veil podcast. I'm your host, Tia Smith, and today is Story Day, and I'm telling you, these stories are going to be amazing. When I read them, I just got so excited and knew that I needed to share. But first, we need to give a huge thank you to Kirsten for showing up yesterday. Her testimony was filled with the Spirit of the Lord. I immediately, when I talked to her the very first time, knew that she surely needed to be testifying of her spiritual gifts. Now, sometimes we think that we can't experiencing these things, or if we are experiencing them, we can't talk to other people about this. What I'm hoping is that as you've listened to testimony after testimony, remember the law of witnesses, my friends, that as we witness to the reality that the veil can part and you can have revelatory experiences, especially within the context of the gathering of Israel, that we no longer have to whisper in corners or worry that people are going to think that we're weird, or this isn't normal, or this isn't a part of the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Testimony after testimony and doctrine after doctrine point us to the reality that we are involved in a mighty work and a glorious work. And that because of that, through the temple, we can experience these very, very sacred things from our ancestors from the other side of the veil. Today's story is going to be about that, maybe in just a little bit of a different way. But first, I wanted to do just a teeny bit of housekeeping. If you're watching on my YouTube channel, there are two videos that look similar, except one has a red audio only marked at the top. There is a podcast version, which is noted by the audio only label, and then you have a video version, which doesn't have the audio only label on it. A lot of times, especially when we're listening to Colette and she's teaching us in the Gathering Academy, it's more important and most important to watch those videos, as it is more effective to learn that way. So that's how you can know. And again, the first link in every description of every video, whether you're on Apple or Spotify, links you to the video version in YouTube. So that's kind of how that goes. And I also just wanted to quickly mention, if you feel like you ever want to donate to the podcast, this takes so much time and money. You'd be surprised at the financial requirements that this takes. If you feel inclined to do so, the links are in the description with Venmo or PayPal, or if you go to my website, you can sign up and just do a monthly recurring, whether it's 3 or 5 or 10. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has supported me through this. It has been a huge mountain for me to climb, and I have not felt alone, not only through your prayers and through your commenting and your liking and subscribing, but when those donations come in, know that they go 100% to supporting the podcast and getting it out. So thank you to everyone for all that you do, for putting my name in the temple, and for really being concerned about me. There's a lot of people who have reached out and asked about my health, and I have been happily responding to each person that I am being supported because I know that you are putting my name in the temple and you're praying for me on a regular basis. Because people who've known me for a long time know that I should have been in the hospital this season by now, and I have not. And I attribute that to you, my friends. So as much as you think that I'm blessing your life, I am being supported and sustained through your prayers and through your faith. And I am so very, very grateful. And I note it every day in my prayers to heaven. So thank you. Another quick little thing, if you are of young single adult age and you live around the UVU area, I've been invited to give a devotional there at noon on March 25th. So that's a Wednesday next week. Actually, today. It's actually today. Yeah. Ooh, I almost got my days mixed up. It's actually today at noon. And I hope you can join me, because we're going to be talking about this doctrine of a high priest and a high priestess, obviously how to part the veil within that, and looking for those patterns that represent the Easter season in our temple worship and who we are in preparation for the second coming. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited about it. Again, noon today at UVU. So hopefully I get to actually meet some of you in person. All right, now for the story. And I'm super excited. This comes from Adele. She sent me a book called Mine Angels Round About You, and it's by David Frederick Babbel or Babel. I'm not quite sure. I think it's Babbel. But he actually has passed away. He's one of those, this book is full of experiences that he had. He was a mission president in Brazil for a while. And I can tell that he has definitely a gift because he looked at the lens of the gathering of Israel, that it was on both sides of the veil and that help came from both sides. So I just wanted to read a couple stories out of that book, and I will leave the link to the book in the description of this video if you want to go purchase it. I would highly, highly recommend it. Thank you, Adele, for pointing me to it. All right, I'm going to read the first one titled Baptismal Service Attended by Ancestors. Silvia de Jesus had already been baptized, but due to a technicality in the registration date of her marriage, she needed to be rebaptized 6 months later. At this second baptism, only 7 or 8 people came to watch. Elder Jacobson shared part of his journal entry about the baptism with me. Quote, I'd have to say that this was probably the most spiritual baptism that I've experienced in my lifetime. Elder Cassio bore his testimony, and it seemed to be from the heart. After that, we sang 2 special hymns, Faith in Every Footstep and In the Baptismal Waters. As we sang, it seemed as though a legion of God's angels were singing with us. It was powerful. It was interesting. The whole time we were there, it sounded like there were quite a few other people in the church. I looked around and couldn't see anybody. 3 times I looked around the chapel to see where the music was coming from, but could see nothing. I then walked down the hall to see if there were others in the building that were singing, but there was nobody in the hall, nor in the rooms alongside the hall. After she was baptized, while changing into dry clothes, I felt the Spirit very strongly telling me that we weren't the only ones there, that many of her deceased ancestors were there, people who are waiting, I believe, for the vicarious work to be done for them. I saw how important she will be and is to so many. Silvia de Jesus threw herself into genealogical work after the baptism. Later, Elder Jacobson supplemented this account with more details in an email. About the choir that sang at the baptism, he wrote, quote, I don't know how and to describe it other than that the voices were perfect. They were clear and crisp and were accompanied with strong feelings of love. From what I can remember, they sang with us in Portuguese, but what I know is I could understand them perfectly. Singing with them was an enormous blessing and sacred privilege. This example struck me for the way that the ancestors seemed to outnumber the actual mortals at the baptism. Since this particular baptism was a do-over, perhaps fewer people attended, but there was no damper on the celebration in heaven. It reminded me that in all of these priesthood ordinances, the power of godliness is manifest. That's Doctrine and Covenants 84, verse 20. Now I want to read one that is titled The Night Watchman, and this is his personal experience from his point of view. My wife and I returned from a trip to the city of Unai in the state of Minas Gerais, where we had recently established their first branch of the church. Shortly after our arrival home on a warm tropical Sunday evening, our 2 assistants came by to see us, and they were both clearly excited about something. They related to us an experience they had had at our home on the previous night. They had been in the area and had dropped by at the end of the day to see whether we had already returned from Unai. When they rang our doorbell, no one answered. The road was completely empty, which was normal at that hour in our community. What happened next was completely unexpected. The elders explained how their attention was drawn to a man walking in their direction. At 30 meters away, his face was still unclear, but as he approached, the elders noticed his strange clothing, an open, heavy dark overcoat, and a matching fedora hat that cast a shadow over his face as he passed below the glare of a streetlight. Elder Freire, a Brazilian, remarked that he had never seen that type of clothing on anyone in Brazil in his life, only at movies. The man swayed slightly from side to side as he strolled towards the elders. He did not seem to be walking like a human being, said Elder Freire. He seemed to be almost floating. He moved down the street, specter-like, toward these two frightened missionaries. That is not a man, Elder Freire told his companion. As he drew nearer, the elders could make out his face with a soft, light glow to it. The hair that wasn't covered by the hat was dark brown. The man was nearly 6 feet tall, in his early 30s, and striking in his appearance. He never looked directly at the elders. They described the conversation that followed. "Good evening. What are you looking for?" the man inquired in a friendly tone. He spoke in a very formal, archaic Portuguese found in the scriptures with an accent characteristic of Rio Grande do Sul, the southernmost state of Brazil. "We're looking for our president. How do you know him?" asked Elder Rampton. "Yes, I do." "Oh, I'm sorry. We are looking for our president. Do you know him?" asked Elder Rampton. "Yes, I do," he replied with a raised eyebrow and a hint of a smile. "But he is not here. You can see that his automobile is not here." And with that, he continued walking toward a long sidewalk corridor near the mission home. Elder Frei and his companion turned to each other and asked if the other felt something strange. Each of us had felt a warmth of spirit as the man spoke with us, almost a loving feeling. Then they looked quickly to see where the man was going, but he was already gone, less than 10 seconds from the time of his conversation with the elders. After listening to the elders' account of what happened that night, I was still puzzled. How could he have vanished? I asked. The sidewalk corridors next to our house seemed too long for someone to walk in the time frame that the missionaries had described. Together with the elders, my wife and I retraced the man's steps along that corridor. It took us 33 seconds to get to the end of it, walking briskly, at which point the man could have turned and disappeared from sight. But the person they saw had less than 10 seconds to do so before he disappeared. There was no place where he could have gone. Moreover, I told the missionaries that I knew of no such man. Because we lived in a cloistered neighborhood with tall, imposing protective walls and high security gates, we had seen our neighbors only when they drove in and out of their automatic gates, and certainly none of them knew us. I didn't know exactly how to interpret this, but I knew that each night in our evening prayers we did as in our evening prayers we said to God to watch over our home, and undoubtedly if the individual the missionaries met that night was sent to watch over our home, he would have known that the assistance posed no danger. His interaction with the missionaries would have been a gesture simply to let us know that our prayers were being attended. This was a significant comfort in our neighborhood, where houses on both sides of ours had been robbed recently. Our house, even without a watchdog, had been safe. I thanked him for sharing their accounts, and they left me to contemplate the experience. I walked slowly back into the house in deep thought. There were a number of strange details to consider. I recalled that prior to our departure for the mission, I had asked for a priesthood blessing from my uncle, who was serving as a patriarch in Akron, Ohio. One of the promises in that blessing was that my deceased father would be given permission to check up on our mission from time to time and help in the work. Remembering the blessing made me wonder whether the individual who spoke with Elder Frady and Elder Rampton was my father. I returned to my mission home office and began thumbing through the few family photos that I had brought with me. I had one photo of my father in his mid-50s and 4 of him when he was 30 years old, taken when he accompanied Elder Ezra Taft Benson on a welfare mission shortly after World War II. As I viewed them, I noticed for the first time that in all 4 photos, my father was wearing a heavy, dark overcoat and a matching fedora hat. In each photo, he appeared to be smiling directly at me. My father was 5 feet 10 and a half inches in height. A quote, warm chill, if there is such a sensation, ran up my spine as I pondered the divine signature. About a year later, and after our missions had concluded, Elder Rampton pulled me aside and spoke with me privately. He said that he had been thinking about that nighttime visitor. Was your father an outgoing man? He asked. Yes, he was very outgoing, I said. In fact, he would frequently start up conversations with strangers in elevators, even in New York City. Why do you ask? Elder Rampton continued, I believe the outgoing man that we saw that night was your father. I think that I know why your father spoke to us in Portuguese. My companion did not speak a word of English, but I was able to converse in either language, so this man spoke in a way that we both could understand. I hadn't said anything about my father in connection with the Night Watchman incident to the elders, and was pleasantly surprised that his conclusion aligned with mine. These stories are extraordinary, but they are not out of the ordinary. Whenever we are gathering Israel, in whatever way, shape, and form that we are, whether it's on a mission or whether it is through temple and family history work, that kind of mission, angels are promised to attend us. And this particular brother Babbel, was promised in a priesthood blessing that his deceased father would be with him at different times and places as he served as a mission president. Our work in the sphere that we have been called upon to work in is just as important as the work out in the mission field. It is the same work, it is a holy work, and the promises are exactly the same. As we seek to unite our families on the other side of the veil, our lives can be filled with angels surrounding us at all times, in our front, in our back, on our sides. They know us, they are solicitous for our welfare, and they want to help us in our work, for it is their work too. And that's something we must remember. I hope these stories have been inspiring for you today and helpful to know that you can walk through these things knowing that you have help from the other side of the veil. I think about this constantly, especially in this work that I've been called upon to do. Sometimes, well, a lot of times, this work is very overwhelming. This testifying to the world about these things can be overwhelming, and yet I feel a very sweet and gentle assurance that my children and my father and my grandparents and my uncles and my cousins who are on the other side are uplifting me and supporting me in all of the ways, and I can continue. And so I'm grateful for their help, for those on the other side of the veil, and I acknowledge them publicly and thank them publicly for their efforts in my life. I hope, my friends, that you will pray to have eyes to see and ears to hear the reality of what is actually surrounding us at all times. Thank you for joining me. Please join us again tomorrow with Colette's Gathering Academy as she teaches us further about how to make our work in this genealogical research easier and more efficient and effective. And then Friday, join me for another awesome talk. We've got some cool things coming up as well, and I'll announce those later. But for now, my friends, have a great week as we are pondering upon Easter and the importance of our Savior, Jesus Christ, his atonement and his resurrection that makes all of this possible. Have a great week. We'll see ya. Bye.